made it myself. No, I didn't. Nice place to maybe sit down and tell our story. This is maybe one of the most intriguing legacies of any mermaid story. It's even believed that Richard the Lionheart was a direct descendant of Melusine the Mermaid. This beautiful waterfall. And he sees at the base of it this woman singing. She isn't totally scared like he thinks she's going to be. Well, that's interesting. And the king is now incensed. He's insulted. And the worst thing, she's obviously having an affair. Every Saturday, she's spending it with the man she's promised her heart. Welcome back to the channel. I have discovered another mermaid. Well, I've known of this mermaid, but maybe you don't know. Do you know of Melusine? This is maybe one of the most intriguing legacies of any mermaid story. Which, of course, I'll get to that at the end. But our story begins with a prince who is lost in a forest. The walls are closing in, or I should say the trees. He believes that no one will ever find him. And this is where he's going to die. What a waste. Why did he go so deeply into this place? And it's just dark, and he's getting all the terrible animal sounds, and all he's feeling is his hunger, and he can't seem to find anything to eat or hunt. And he starts to hear the wolves, and he thinks, that's it, I'm done for. But then he realizes it's not the howl of a wolf he's hearing, it's the song of a woman. It's right there that he realizes he's saved. And he follows this beautiful song. I should also say that if you're ever curious about the artwork, like you want to own it, for instance, you can check out my website, ghostofthegaslight.com. You can see the originals, the prints, some swag, what have you. Check it out. So he takes off in this direction of the singing, and he gets to this, hey, look what we have here. Pretty cool. Nice place to maybe sit down and tell our story. If not for a little while. Isn't that beautiful? I made it myself. No, I didn't. So he's looking at this beautiful waterfall. And he sees at the base of it this woman singing. And she's in this beautiful white gown. It's completely drenched. And lucky for him, he gets to see her womanliness and all of that. And he's feeling completely enamored and just stricken with her beauty. And he ventures over to see her, and she isn't totally scared like he thinks she's going to be. Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's always a beautiful thing. What are you doing here? He asks. And she looks at him. She says, I'm bathing. And he's kind of weirded out. And she says, what? And he's like, you're like fully clothed. I mean, your dress is totally wet. That's no way to bathe. Aren't you worried about a man finding you and, who knows? And she says, well, I mean, if I didn't have anything on, I think I'd be more worried about a man. And he says, oh, so this is how you bathe? And she's like, yes, I always come here. I love this place. Well, and he looks at her hands. There's no ring. And he says, well, your husband must be worried about you here. And then she says, I'm not married. And she smiles in a way that just makes him even more courageous. And he says, hey, why don't you come to my kingdom? I'd love to be your husband. And you would never have to worry about anybody coming here and ambushing you. I'll give you the most beautiful tub ever. And she says, I don't really know you, so I'm flattered, but I must decline. But they wind up going to the shore, and she happens to have some amazing food that he is not sure what it is, but it nourishes him. She tells him how to get back to his kingdom, but he keeps coming back, only to her, and he keeps asking her, he keeps getting to know her, and finally he woos her and she agrees. And then he carries her to the kingdom and she consents to marriage, but she says, I have one rule. He says, name it, anything. On Saturdays, I will retire to my chambers, and you are not to come get me. You're not to call my name. You're not to knock on the door. You're not to be anywhere near that door. You do that, I'm gone. If you can do that, I will be your wife. I will be a great queen, everything. And he says, that's it? Yeah, that's fine. That's great. Well, they get married, and it's a beautiful wedding. Everybody loves her. She's so charming. She shows she has a flair for designing things, namely buildings and architecture. Like, yeah. So the first 6 days after the honeymoon, they're wonderful. And then she says, well, it's Saturday. And he says, okay, all right, fine. And it's very tough for him to deal with it. And he still just can't get enough of her, but he toughs it out the entire day. It's really hard, but he does it. Finally, on Sunday morning, she enters into his chambers and all is right with the world. And this goes on maybe for a few months. He always hates Saturdays. And one day, it's Saturday morning, he's on a little hunting expedition with his father, and his father's saying, hey, where's that beautiful wife of yours? I'd love to look upon her. God, she's so gorgeous. And she's so funny. She said this thing the other day, and you know what? I'm going to do a supper tonight, a big supper, and I want her there. So the son says, well, I don't know how to... Okay, so here's the thing, Dad. It's Saturday. That's not going to happen. And the king says, what? Why? What do you mean? What? Bring her. Well, then the prince is forced to explain these odd terms. And the king is now incensed. He's insulted. He says, you mean that this girl you found in the woods is dictating what a prince does and now what a king does? And he is completely offended. This is the worst embarrassment he's ever felt as a king. So just to give you an idea of how mad this king is, he's completely had his kingliness taken away by this mysterious woman, Melusine, who was found in the woods by his son, the prince. And he starts attaching Melusine's name to all kinds of epithets. Epithets no man wants to hear his father say about his woman. He calls her a harlot, a whore, that she's manipulative, that she's a floozy, that she is a peasant girl, that she's putting on airs, that she doesn't know her place, and that she's taken his own manliness away, him being the prince. And the worst thing, she's obviously having an affair. Every Saturday, she's spending it with the man she's promised her heart. And he has married a very deceptive woman. And he is so worked up now. He's totally just red in the face. He takes the reins of his own horse and he rides off into the forest. And the prince says, Father, where are you going? No, please come back. And the king doesn't return that evening. And there's a great storm. And the prince sends a search party in the middle of the storm to go find this king. Meanwhile, Melusine comes back in the morning. And she She says, "What's the matter?" And the prince looks at her a little different. And he says he can't find his father. And she says, "Oh no, I hope he's all right. He's such a sweet man." The prince just kind of grunts. And finally, the search party comes back with bad news. They found the king. Apparently, he slipped off his horse, and both fell to their death off of a cliff during the storm. And so now, the prince must assume the throne. And Melusine is the queen of the kingdom. And he does his duties. Everything's going well. The land is fertile. The people are happy. New laws are passed. The economy is thriving. But on his days, sitting on the throne, he can't stop hearing those words of his father. The accusations his father made about Melusine. Meanwhile, Melusine is the talk of the town, the kingdom. And the king always talks her up, even though inside he is brooding about her. But the buildings that she designs, they look like they're from another world. They look almost like the way that the sun hits the shimmering glass of the buildings almost makes you feel like you're underwater, the way it dances sunlight everywhere. And people come from all over to see her stuff. They come from all over to see her designs, her architecture. Stories are told of her wit, of her humor, of her poetry. She celebrates the musicians, and it's this beautiful, wonderful age for the kingdom, culturally and economically. But people always hear about this darkness that comes over the king when he's alone. And people start to wonder about their strange separation on Saturdays. How odd. There's no party where they're together on Saturdays? Does she have another religion? That's not okay. What is it? So they've had quite a life together. They've had the life any king and queen would want. He's got his problems on Saturday night where his mind drives him crazy, but, no marriage is perfect. They've had 10 children together. You can imagine every Saturday night he's freaking out, and then on Sunday he is like a parched man in the desert for her. So, a lot of passion. It keeps the relationship interesting, you can say. But one day, years down the road, he believes he's entitled to know what's happening in there. So he steals over to her chambers. He doesn't believe it could be an affair. He stopped believing that a long time ago. And he looks in the keyhole and he can see she's taking a bath. And he looks at the tub and his eyes are gazing on her body. But still, after all these years, he can't get enough of her. But she's writhing around. It's very strange. Splashing water. And he's almost thinking like her motions are like lovemaking. Is there someone in the tub with her? Or is she just writhing like that on her own? What is that? He can't figure out why anyone would move that way or how they can move that way. And he starts to see this giant fish thing in there with her. And he just suddenly is horrified. She has been having an affair, after all. And it hasn't been with some human thing. It's with some kind of sea creature that she's been holding in here this whole time. How could that happen? He's trying to figure it out when suddenly she stands up in the tub and he sees her perfect, iconic female physique. But below her stomach, it's not human. It's all fish scales. And it turns into two fins. Melusine has two fins, not one. Like two fish tails. And completely horrified. What has he just had 10 children with all these years? He's pretty freaked out. He is very freaked out. But he realizes that's what it was. She is totally ashamed of herself. And she knows I will be. And I am. But I'm going to bear this secret now that I know. And it'll just be for us to know, the two of us. And then he talks himself further through that and is relieved, and he relaxes, and he sits down and rests his head on the door in that relief that he feels. The door creaks, and she hears it, and through the peephole, the mermaid Melusine sees the prince's eye, and before the prince can do anything, not that he could, she flips out, and this torrent, this little storm happens in the tub, like this little hurricane, and she shoots out of the window and is never heard from again. Some say every 7 years she would return, but only to see the kids. And it was good luck when she saw them. But the poor king never, ever got to see her again. Now, the interesting thing with this story is it's actually given way to a lot of different legacies. In the Middle Ages, around this area, which I believe was Germany, Scandinavia, I think France, you had a lot of kingdoms because, there's a lot of oceanic activity there, trading, and they all claimed to be descendants of those 10 children. And so they are, in fact, descendants of mermaids, according to them, and several of them their kingdoms got bigger, and they became Germany, they became France, they even became England. It's even believed that Richard the Lionheart was a direct descendant of Melusine the mermaid, which supposedly makes Charles III a descendant of Melusine. Interesting, right? And there, I believe, there's the chateau in France, I forget, the name escapes me, but it was said to have been designed by Melusine. And there's this whole rich history about her, which was put in a book by a man who was looking to tell her story because he said he was her descendant, therefore he was heir to the chateau and all of that stuff. So Melusine has a very interesting second life in our recorded history as a mermaid who was discovered in a forest, seduced a prince, had all these amazing children of royalty, designed all this inspiring architecture, and then disappeared mysteriously and lives on in this legend and all kinds of strange accounts throughout history. So, that is the story, that is the secret, that is the strange life on land, that is the legacy of Melusine. And if you enjoyed this, check another one out right here.